Please be seated. It's hard to believe, isn't it, that it was just 2 months ago that our lives were interrupted by the news of the shooting at Marjory Stoneman Douglas High School, where 17 more young people were murdered. It is a horrific memory that most people don't want to dwell on. And unlike those directly affected, we have the choice to mentally put aside what happened that day, but not so for those whose lives were changed forever, who found their fear being transformed into the courage to speak out and act out in remarkable ways against a political bureaucracy that has somehow been unable to enact any meaningful change. It is incredible that a relatively few young voices were able to mobilize hundreds of thousands of people in the March for Our Lives rally only 5 weeks later. Some of my colleagues and parishioners of theirs actually got on buses on Friday night, Good Friday, and traveled throughout the night to participate in what they termed a modern-day Palm Sunday. And at the end of the march, they got back on their buses and made it back in time for their own Palm Sunday services. The movement born from those few dozen young voices, you see, was that powerful. As I listened to the speeches given by those remarkably composed and passionate students, how they responded in a way that made sense of a senseless tragedy, I also thought that their shared experience is a resurrection story as well. For much like the disciples, these young people were up close and personal witnesses to a horrific event they had to somehow make sense of. Now, for those of you who were here last week and heard John's accounting of the disciples gathered in the upper room, first without and then with Thomas, today's recounting from Luke may seem redundant, and you know what it is, except that today poor Thomas isn't called out as the only doubter. Much like what usually happens immediately after an incident of great magnitude, those personally involved are trying to somehow sort through what happened in hopes of making some sense out of all of it. Even though some of the details are different, both John and Luke are describing the same event, the accounting of what happened on the evening of Easter Day. The disciples have sequestered themselves in the upper room where they're trying to make sense of the various sightings of Jesus. The women who have been to the tomb, Mary Magdalene's encounter with Jesus in the garden, the reports of him appearing to Simon Peter, and most recently, his revelations to those who broke bread with him on the way to Emmaus. So here they are on Easter night, each giving details of what they had been seen and heard, speculating about what really happened, and just as Jesus is prone to do, whenever and wherever life is unraveling, he appears in the midst of them. This isn't just some apparition or figment of their imaginations. It is Jesus, fully human and fully divine. As it would be with anyone, initially he scares the living daylights out of them. And so to move them beyond this amazed disbelief and absolute terror, he invites them. Look, it really is me. Look at my hands and my feet. Come on, touch me. Touch me and feel for yourselves that I am real. And then, like my son, whenever he comes home, he asks for something to eat. Because ghosts and apparitions don't eat, you see. I don't know about you, but I'm not so crazy about touching someone's wounds, physical or otherwise, because you see, this act always brings with it the possibility of calling to mind our own wounds and battle scars and how we got them. And often it brings back the fear and the terror and the anguish we felt. But if we can find the courage to reach out and go ahead and share in another's pain, somehow we are both healed by the encounter. The disciples' fear turns to joy, although a joy that still resides in disbelief. So understandable, they have no frame of reference for what is happening. And then we are told Jesus opens their minds to understanding scriptures, and he enters their hearts that have been broken open by grief, and he says, go witness, and you tell the world what really happened. This is a huge lesson for us as well. It is absurd to come to church on Sunday and listen to the resurrection story, our resurrection story, as though it were just something for us to remember and honor. Something that happened a long time ago that we can point to and say, there it is. There's the story of Christianity. As though it were a one-time event that has passed us. Easter isn't an annual celebration. It marks the anniversary of a new beginning. It is a life-changing event for each one of us. Our role as followers of the risen Christ is no less important or urgent than it was the day it was given to those gathered in that upper room. Like them, we are told, go out and proclaim that I have risen. Start practicing resurrection. Jesus invites us to meet him in the ugly and painful messes of this world and touch his wounds and bear witness to the reality that he is risen indeed, for and with each other, and especially in this world. This is how we make sense of Easter, not by honoring the memory of what happened long ago, but by living every day as though we truly believe that the tomb is empty. So I leave you with this thought. If Emma Gonzalez, Anna Landon, Juan and Santiago Munera, Emily Silver, Rachel Kupman, Sam Zeef, David Hogg, and a handful of other young people, ages 11 to 17, can mobilize hundreds of thousands of people around the country to stand up against gun violence. Imagine the wounds we could heal if we joined our voices together and proclaimed the good news. Christ is alive. Come and let us show you where to find him. Amen.